Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Sabrina Kofer, and on behalf of Choice and ACRL, I'd like to welcome you to today's program, Exploring the Uniqueness of Nature Reviews Journals, Innovation, Impact, and the SDGs, which is sponsored by Springer Nature. This session is one in a series of sponsored webinars from Choice and ACRL that addresses new ideas and developments of interest to the academic library community. I'll just put a couple links in the chat where you can register for upcoming webinars and watch previous webinar recordings. Before we get started, I'd like to point out just a few features of the webinar software. All attendees who join the presentation are automatically muted and your cameras are off, so no need to worry about generating any noise or feedback. We've got that taken care of for you. In the main area of the screen, you can follow along with the presentation materials. To adjust the size of the slides or video, you can use the divider in the middle of the screen to slide the sizes to your liking. We are using the Q&A feature today. Please use it to ask questions of our speaker or to share any comments. We'll answer as many questions as we have time for at the end of the presentation, so please do type your questions into the Q&A module as they occur to you. Also, there's closed captioning available for today's session. To toggle the automated captions on or off, please use the CC button on the bottom panel of your screen. Last, please note that we are recording today's program and everyone who registered should receive a follow-up email with a link to the archive version. And with that, we are ready to get started, so I will hand it over to Louise.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to say good afternoon because it's good afternoon where I am in the UK. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to be talking to you today about Nature Reviews journals, and I hope you enjoy the talk. So to get started, just a little bit about me. I've been an editor on Nature Reviews Urology for 10 years now. Little bit of a roundabout way to get where I was. I did a BSc in marine biology, and then I did an MRes in evolutionary biology, and then I went into work. I was a research technician and then a research assistant. I did my PhD actually in the liver, specifically on cytoglobin, before discovering my love for literature, scientific literature, and applying to become an editor at Nature Reviews Urology, where I started in 2014, and I was promoted to senior editor in 2016, and that's my current position on the journal. This is what we're going to be talking through today. So we're going to be talking about the Nature Reviews journals versus the Nature Research journals and what the differences are between the two of them. Then I'll take you through Nature Reviews at a glance, a whistle-stop tour of the portfolio. Then I will describe to you why we at Nature Reviews think reviews specifically are important. Then I'll take you through the publication process at Nature Reviews. And then I'll talk a bit about our collaborative approaches and inclusive publishing. So let's get going. So what are the differences between research and reviews journals? This slide basically tells you everything you need to know. So a research journal will present the most up-to-date and innovative original research, so brand new findings. At the Nature journals, we like research which we believe is the highest quality and will have the biggest impact in the respective field. The research is submitted to the journals by the authors directly, and the editors ensure that the work adheres to the highest scientific, ethical, and reporting standards. And at Nature, we're committed to improving the rigor and reproducibility of the scientific literature. And here, the publications are usually referred to as articles, which is a novel research study of high quality and general interest. By contrast, Nature Reviews journal is where we publish our reviews type articles, and this is where original research is summarized and interpreted to create an overview of that topic. So a review should filter and highlight the most impactful research. It's usually commissioned by the in-house editorial team. and it is really useful for readers who need a quick and comprehensive overview of recent developments or a new research area, or also background information on a topic, because obviously we have a back catalogue of reviews as well. We have a large editorial team who all come together to create clear figures. That includes editors and art editors, as well as the authors. And we have in-house art editors who draw up our figures. And then the manuscripts are scientifically edited to hopefully enhance the structure and clarity of the article overall. And reviews should provide an accessible, authoritative, balanced overview of a field or a topic. So, Nature reviews specifically, we have a portfolio of 24 journals, which are dedicated to publishing review and commentary articles in the key areas of clinical, life, physical, social, and earth sciences. And each Nature Reviews journal is run by a team of full-time professional editors. So for everybody on the team, that is their job. They don't do any research anymore. They're not practicing scientists. Specifically, the manuscript editors usually have a scientific background. So we have in-depth knowledge of the area in which we work. But we don't actually practice science anymore. So there are manuscript editors, that's somebody like me. We have editorial administration. They help with all the administrative tasks that go into publishing an article. We have art editors who will draw up any submitted artwork into a specific style with a set of standards that they adhere to. We have copy editors who then check the manuscript for the typographical and spelling errors that could slip through. And then our production editors lay the article out and prepare it for publication and do the final checks. So it's a big team and we all come together to create a lovely article. These are the current reviews journals that we have. We have clinical science journals. I work on a clinical science journal, life sciences, physical sciences, 2 primers journals, and 1 social sciences journal at the moment. Planned for 2025 are the launches of Nature Reviews Clean Technology and Nature Reviews Biodiversity, which expands our portfolio further into physical sciences and earth sciences. So, as of May 2024, there are 64 nature journals with 2 in pre-launch. The 2 in pre-launch are specifically the 2 I've just mentioned, Nature Reviews Clean Technology and Nature Reviews Biodiversity. As you can see, we have quite a lot of reviews journals when you compare it against the research journals, which I think is quite nice because it means that we cover quite a wide range of topics to give our readers overviews of. So we provide a lot of in-depth information for the academic community, which I think is a really good thing. So moving on to why reviews are important. This graph here is just a depiction of the increase in output from a single area of science, physics. So you can see that across the previous 125 years, the number of papers published in physics specifically has increased dramatically, which means that it's really difficult for scientists, academics to keep on top of everything that gets published. And in 2023, there were almost 22,000 articles published, which was equates to about 60 a day. And for cancer therapy, there was 154 a day. And as a researcher, somebody working in this field, it's impossible to keep on top of that and also do all your own work. So what a review will do is do that work for you. So reviews, Nature Review is a great way for researchers and students to stay up to date with the field and to navigate all the information that comes from research papers. And they're also really useful for those who want to learn more about a new field. They provide background to a topic. Specifically talking from my own experience, I found them really important when I started my PhD, because my PhD was in something I didn't have a background in. So what I went to start with was all the reviews for the three main areas that I needed to know about in order to conduct my PhD. And Nature Reviews articles are authoritative, balanced and reliable, accessible, and they are also an excellent teaching tool. We'll go a little bit more into that. So as a teaching tool, this is how an article would look as a PDF. This one specifically from Nature Reviews Cardiology. And when you view it online, you get a little reading pane where you can navigate through the sections. It's got some subjects. If you clicked through on those subjects, it would take you to articles that covered similar topics. We also provide a list of associated content, because obviously if you're reading this review, associated content might be useful to you. And then specifically for something like lecture teaching, some of our articles also contain glossaries in which specific terms are defined, and they can be useful in helping students learn the terminology of the topic that they're learning about. We work quite hard on providing useful and accessible tools for when somebody reads our review. You can also, you can see on this where the sections are, you can look at the figures. If you clicked on the figures, you could look at them together with the text of the article, so you can look at them in context. And also you can click through the references. If you hovered over a reference, a pop-up would come up and it would directly link out to that reference. So you can link out to key references as well. Also, sometimes in the reference list, there are highlighted references. So the authors will have made a note of references that they think are key in their review, which makes the review a really useful teaching tool. So with regards to how our readers use our articles, a survey that was done showed that mostly they're used to learning about broader research activities in the field in which somebody operates, and to inform their own research, and also to keep up to date with research outside of their field. And a survey in 2022 on reviews and news and opinion articles in the Nature Reviews journals showed that researchers were supported by using them, in that it saved them time in understanding broad and related research. They acted as a gateway into areas outside their expertise, and help support understanding of interdisciplinary fields, which is an emerging topic that I'll talk about a little bit later on in my talk as well. And then they also help them explain their topics to non-specialists and students, and that's something that's really important to us at Nature Reviews. Our reviews are expert, they're written by experts, but we want them to be accessible beyond people with specific expertise. So they should be useful for students just starting out in the field, and also non-specialists. Specifically, from a clinical journal's point of view, we want our articles to be accessible to patients, because patients might be interested in the disease that they have. and want to learn more about it. And if our reviews aren't useful for them, then I don't think they're really doing their job properly, because they should be informing not just the researchers and the clinicians, but also the people who are living with the diseases. So 84% of respondents identified opinion and comment pieces as very or extremely useful, more than the reviews actually. So comment and opinion pieces do what they say, basically. They're slightly more opinionated. They're still off a balance, they're still properly referenced, but they can be about emerging topics, topics that might be a little bit controversial. And they're there to provide the opinion and support discussion around that topic. But to summarize this slide, reviewer articles are an essential tool in the ever-expanding scientific literature, because research papers are constantly published and it's very challenging to stay up to date with the new developments. And that's what a review does. It helps you stay up to date with the developments in the field. So why are Nature reviews unique specifically? So Nature reviews pack a punch. We have high editorial and production values. Like I said before, we're professional, we're all in-house, and we provide guidance and support to the authors. The art editors create visual summaries to complement the reviews and help explain some of the complex details of the science. And then professional copy and production editors apply the highest standards to composition and layout to make the review as accessible as possible. All this culminates in high author satisfaction. Our scores are consistently high. 99% of authors rate their overall publishing experience as excellent or good as of 2023. So that's brilliant. I'm very proud of that, actually. And then we have great academic reach. 41% of Nature Reviews articles are in the top 1% cited category for their area, according to the 2022 data. And all of the Nature Reviews journals are in the top 25% of their impact factor categories, meaning that we are well used in our various fields. People trust us, and they like reading our articles and citing them. And then we also have great societal reach and contribution to policy. So 3,400 reviews from the Nature Reviews portfolio were cited in policy documents between 2019 and 2023. And 10% of those were from new launches, which is really good. And it's nice to know that, as well as helping academics and researchers and clinicians, we also help governments and policymakers and actually have an influence on society. And these policy documents were mostly government level, but they were also authored by non-government organisations and think tanks. So this is the process of writing for us. This is a lovely PDF that our art team drew up to help authors with the process, navigate the process. And I like this little quote up here: "We don't just publish the paper, we make it better." I truly believe that. I'm very passionate about the editorial work that goes into the papers that we publish in Nature Reviews. So the very first stage is commissioning. And somebody like me, a manuscript editor, will commission a review type article, and we work with the authors to refine the scope. So usually the initial stage is for the invited author to provide a synopsis, which is basically a little bullet point document stating what topics are going to be covered and the main references they're going to use in order to write their review. Not all of them, but just the key ones, the really important ones. probably the ones they'd have as highlighted references if they were going to highlight them. So we work with the author to then refine the scope before they start writing, which is the feedback stage. So content and scope, the structure. The article should flow nicely. It should read a bit like a story with a nice beginning, middle, and end. We provide comments on the accessibility and the suitability of any display items proposed. We can also propose other display items if we think they might be useful to the readers. And we also comment on the diversity, equity and inclusion aspects of the article during the feedback stage. Specifically at Nature Reviews, we peer review our long format articles, which isn't standard, but this ensures that a set of expert referees provide guidance on the contents and comments to the authors about maybe something they've missed, what could be included, what might need explaining more, which really helps enhance the review because although as manuscript editors we do have a background and knowledge of the field, quite often the topics covered by a journal are quite broad. So for example, at Nature Reviews Urology, we cover urological cancers. We also cover urinary tract infections, sexually transmitted infections, things to do with incontinence. So the topics are really very broad, and the in-depth knowledge of those topics is best provided by experts who work in the field. So we send our reviews out to peer review. Based on the peer review comments, we send the article back to the authors and they can revise the article based on the peer reviewer comments and provide a rebuttal, which the editors then go through to check that the peer reviewer comments have been satisfactorily addressed. And then we edit the article, and this is a really in-depth process. We basically go through line by line, word by word, to thoroughly edit the manuscript. We look at the structure, we look at the flow, we check the scientific correctness, we check the clarity of the language, we check the language used, and we check for consistency with language use and specifically terminology, which aids accessibility as well. So things are consistently referred to using the same terminology throughout the text. That specifically helps students and non-specialists in the field. During this process, we also look at the artwork, any artwork that's been sent. The editor can annotate for the art editor. We check that it's useful in the context of the review. It enhances the descriptions provided in the review. It helps explain complex things like signaling pathways or mechanisms. You know, it really needs to complement and enhance the text and not just be there for the sake of being there. And then we send that to our art editor, who will draw it up into our specific style using the set of guidelines that they've got for clarity and accessibility. We then send the edit back to the author and the artwork proofs for them to check over, to check that we've got the science of the articles right, the science of the artwork right, and check that our edits haven't changed any meanings. And once those revisions have come back in, we then accept the article and we hand it over to our production team. Once it's at production, it goes to copy editing. Again, it's just a check on the language, the grammar, house style. We have a specific way of writing things, which is very specific to Nature Reviews. Check the spelling, check the nomenclature and the consistency again. And it then goes to proof. The author proofs it. We then have a team of proofreaders who will reproof it once it's come back, and then the manuscript editor also gets a final check over before it gets sent for publication, where our production editor will do the final layout checks, check everything looks lovely, and then it gets sent online. We have a mix of journal types because some of our portfolio is very well established, and we're there before the internet, really. So they do have online and print issues, and some of our journals are online only. So everything gets published online first now, and then for the print issues, it also goes into a print journal, actual physical journal. And they're really nice to see. I still like the print journals, but I'm a little bit old school. That you can see the link there to this PDF. And as you can see from the text down the side, there's approximately 110 staff who work hard to create the high quality and accessible review articles published in Nature Reviews Journal each month. And yes, believe that the steps that I've just described to you are vital for to enable a broad audience of readers to use and enjoy the content that we create. So going into a little bit more depth with these commissioning. So as the manuscript editors, we will look for a hot topic within the remit of the journal. The timing has got to be good and the author panel has got to be the best it can be. So we go through these questions basically. What are the hot topics? Are there any current controversies? Are there areas or topics that need an update? Maybe we've got an old review and there's been more developments in that field and we could revisit that. And then we look at who would be the best author at that time. Normally writing a good review starts with good research. If they've given an excellent talk, that can be a really good start for a review. We then discuss the scope amongst ourselves before proposing it to the potential author. And we discuss if the timing's right. So we look at the novelty of the article or whether it would provide new or unique insight into that topic. But we will not knowingly overlap ourselves with other published reviews. We always look for unique content gaps in the literature. We want to publish reviews that provide new insight, are really valuable and useful to the field. And that's our aim. So then providing feedback. We discuss with the author, it's a collaborative process, what the scope will be. So we'll propose a broad scope initially and ask the author if they agree. Do they think that anything should be left out? Do they think that anything should be included? And then once the synopsis comes in, we look at whether it agrees with the matches with the agreed scope, if it's balanced, whether the title actually matches the content, which can be a problem sometimes. Sometimes the title can prepare the reader for something that they then don't get from the text of an article. So you've got to ensure that the title of the article prepares the reader for what is actually included in the article. Is the introduction good? Are the aims of the article understandable and the meanings clear? Is it too long or short? Does it provide enough in-depth information? Or is it too long and somebody would lose interest in reading it? And then again, the flow. And we always check for plagiarism. It goes through our plagiarism software. The peer review process. So all our review content is peer reviewed. We use 3 or more referees, dependent on who wants to review for us. We're always very grateful to our reviewers for reviewing for us. So when we send it to peer review, we ask for the referees to focus on the science specifically, because the language will be addressed once it gets developmentally edited by us. And we ask them to also comment on the accessibility, whether anything's being left out, whether the display items enhance the article, and if the reference list is appropriate. And this is all intended to improve the content of the article itself. And then we edit it. This is my job. This is the bit I like doing the best. So we look at whether the sections are balanced, whether there's enough detail or there's too much detail. there needs to be enough detail that the information provided is understandable to the reader, but doesn't bog them down. So the focus isn't clouded by the amount of detail provided. The abstract needs to be clear and engaging, so somebody wants to read the article itself, and it needs to reflect the content of the manuscript. And then an accessible introduction with a foundation for the reader to get into the details of the topic. So it should touch on everything that's covered very, very briefly, just to prepare the reader for the content in the main body of the text. And then the concepts need to be presented in a logical order. And if they're not, we will move sections around, which does cause, some troubles with reference lists and things like that. But the most important thing is that there is a good narrative flow which makes sense. So the story is told clearly. And then the accessibility again, is it clear and enjoyable for specialists and non-specialists? Proper referencing, complementary display items. And then is the voice unified? Because often these articles are written by many authors, and sometimes they write a section each. So we try and make the text sound as if it's been written by a single voice, so everything's consistent throughout, so it flows nicely. And as I've mentioned before, the artwork, our team of art editors are absolutely excellent, and they will redraw the figures into the style of nature reviews, ensuring clarity, flow, consistency, and presentation. But as I've said, they do get checked by the authors to ensure that they are correct as well. This is just an example of how our artwork can evolve. So as you can see, we can get quite detailed pencil drawings from the authors. This author was obviously a very good artist, and then our art editor has interpreted that and coloured it in using our style to make it clear and accessible. And then we can get doodles, basically, quite basic figure submissions, which the editor can make notes on, ask the art editor what's possible, and then the art editor will interpret both the author's original and the manuscript editor's notes and create a figure based on that, again using our house style, making it accessible and easy to interpret. And I quite like showing these slides because I think the artwork at Nature Reviews is absolutely brilliant and very useful in things like talks and slides. Yeah, I like seeing them when I'm out and about. And then the final stage of the process after all of that, as I mentioned, is an accept. We accept the article for publication, it undergoes copy editing and proofing, and then it goes online. So we've got several types of long format articles. These are the articles that get peer reviewed. Most people, we coordinate reviews, so most people think of the review article. We also have a more opinionated piece called a perspective. This is for an emerging topics and can be more opinionated, whereas reviews are comprehensive, authoritative, and an accessible overview as subject. Perspectives can postulate hypotheses of a topic based on evidence from other areas, for example, emerging research and things like that. Then we also have these sort of expert collaboration type articles, consensus statements. Consensus statements are comprehensive analyses and outcomes of a scientific or medical issue by a panel of experts. They have very specific criteria for what a consensus statement is. And they're usually created by groups who undergo some sort of process, like a Delphi process or a set of questionnaires with a pre-specified panel of experts. We have evidence-based guidelines, which are systematically developed recommendations for standardizing research or clinical practice. Again, this is normally created by an expert panel. Similar to that is an expert recommendation. They're not guidelines, they're slightly different, but reasonably similar. This is where a group of experts come together to create their recommendations on a specific topic. We also have technical reviews. So this one, for example, I think is from Nature Reviews Physics. And then we also publish primers. So Nature Reviews Disease Primers was the first primer reviews type journal that was launched, and it publishes introductory review articles called primers that cover one disease and describe all aspects from its epidemiology to its mechanisms, diagnosis and treatment. So they're really comprehensive overviews of one specific disease. And what you can see here is the prime view that goes with it. So there's an article, which is a very collaborative review from many authors usually, that goes through those sections that I've described, the epidemiology, mechanisms, diagnosis and treatment. And then the art editor with the authors and the editors create this prime view, which is a very brief overview of the article that's very accessible, that summarizes the key points of the articles. And I think prime views are a great resource, specifically for medical students. And then our next primers type journal was Nature Reviews Methods Primers. And this journal publishes articles covering analytical, applied statistical, theoretical and computational methods that are used in the life and physical sciences. Very similar. You get a prime view with it. And again, it's a really useful resource for researchers, especially those who are looking into potentially using a different technique that they've not used before in their research. So moving on to a new topic now, collaborative approaches across scientific publishing. So we know that research is evolving and becoming more collaborative. And it means it's becoming more complex and involves many more disciplines. And this is particularly true for the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And in order for these to have the biggest impact, they need to pull together multiple disciplines to provide the holistic view of the real world impact of something to be useful to policymakers. And as an example of how we can help with this is from Nature Reviews Earth and Environment. This review specifically pulled together the several different aspects of political, societal, demographic, economic and environmental areas on sea level rise and human migration. And to date, this review has been cited in 12 different policy documents, which just again highlights the value and utility of having a review like this for society as a whole, which I think is the whole point, really. It's all to enhance human endeavour. And tied to that are our approaches to inclusive publishing. So just to talk to you about our editorial thought process and strategy about inclusive publishing. So overall, we believe that being diverse and inclusive is good for science and better for the storytelling because you get a broader viewpoint. And when we consider our inclusivity, we look at the authorship. So inclusive authorship includes diverse backgrounds, geographical areas, gender, topics like that. And then For the topics we cover, we look at underrepresented areas in the topics we cover. For example, this comment from Nature Reviews, cardiology, strategies for the delivery of sex-based equity in cardiovascular clinical trials. We know that women are underrepresented in clinical trials overall, really. So this comment, this front half piece, is an opinion piece based on trying to improve that. I'd say that pretty much all of the Nature Reviews journals actively think about covering topics that are related to inclusivity issues. We then have a set of formats that we use to cover these topics on inclusivity issues. So, for example, you can see here we've got a question and answer set, which is about people who started off in the lab and they went into different areas of science. So this is one format we can use to cover inclusivity issues. We also have different formats. So we have things like worldviews, in which one person gives their view of something that's happened to them in science. You've seen the comment articles, and there's viewpoint articles as well, where they're longer format. They're often authored by more than one person, in which a panel individually answer a set of questions. And then we also have editorial training, sensitivity reading, and inclusive language. So articles that have either controversial or inclusivity, or cover inclusivity related topics, will get read by a specific proofreader who's been trained in sensitivity to ensure the language used is correct. And we have an inclusive language guide to help us in using the language that we use. So yeah, so our sensitivity style guide is intended to help writers and editors avoid offensive or upsetting language when addressing sensitive topics and to promote inclusivity. As an example of some of the collections that we've published at Nature Reviews to raise awareness of topics regarding inclusivity issues, at Nature Reviews Urology, we've specifically published on women in urology. Women are massively underrepresented in the urological field, and we've also published a collection for Pride, as has Nature Reviews Nephrology. You can see cardiology have got a series of articles on DEI, and so have neurology, materials science, and then we've got a collection specifically on women's health, which we know is under-researched as well. And then from Nature Reviews Chemistry, disability inclusion in chemistry as well. So as a group of journals, we like to provide a platform for these specific topics. And then with regard to the Sustainable Development Goals, we have a Sustainable Development Goals programme, which aims to connect researchers who are tackling the world's toughest challenges with the practitioners in policy and business who need those insights to achieve their goals. And so when we are commissioning, we bear the Sustainable Development Goals in mind. You can see from this little box here that Nature Reviews disease primers in 2023 that more than 50% of its articles were related to one or more of the Sustainable Development Goals, which is brilliant. And you can see here we've got some collections in which some of the reviews that we publish that are related are brought together with other relevant articles for women's health, which is Sustainable Development Goal 5, gender equality, and then the Nature Reviews Earth and Environment collection on geosciences for the energy transition is related to this number 7, the affordable and clean energy. And that's it. Um, are there any questions? I hope that was useful.
Great. Yeah. Thanks so much, Louise. We have about around 15 minutes or so for questions. So I'll just encourage attendees, if you haven't submitted a question yet, feel free to put that in the Q&A. Also, I'm just going to launch a couple poll questions here from Springer Nature. So feel free to fill that out as well. Okay, so we can get started. We have a question here from Sophie who asks, if I want to publish open access in one of the journals, but I don't have funding, I discount PCs. If so, is it possible to apply for a waiver before submission of an article and not at the time of submission? And Sophie is in Canada, if that adds any context.
So I have to say we don't publish open access. There aren't any fees to publish with us, but we're a subscription-based set of journals. You need a subscription in order
Got it.
to read the articles. So to publish with us, you don't pay for it, but the reader pays the other end via their subscription.
Got it. Okay, thank you. All right, a few other questions here. How does Springer Nature determine the topics for new nature journals? Are there any trends or user data that you all draw on?
That's done by a different team. So the editors of the current Nature Reviews journals don't discuss, they don't come up with the ideas for new nature journals. That's a different team who do that.
Got it. Okay. And let's see, could you speak to the benefits that nature reviews journals provide early career researchers?
Um, so as I was talking about authorship, we always encourage a broad, diverse authorship. It shouldn't just be, the established big names in a particular field. We like our author list to include early stage researchers. We have quite a few early stage researchers as our first authors. Quite often it's their topic, either their specific postdoc or their PhD that the topic is on. So they essentially write the article. We also encourage the inclusion of early career researchers at peer review. So when we send out peer review instruction or peer review invitations, we ask whether our invited peer reviewer has anybody they would like to invite to co-review with them who's at the early stage of their career. So we encourage involvement in the review process that way as well.
Great. Okay. Um, let's see. You talked about making sure reviews are accessible to undergraduates and the lay person.
Mm-hmm.
So how does the editorial team help make sure that happens, especially in disciplines with very specific jargon or
Yeah,
concepts?
I mean, sometimes jargon's impossible to avoid, but we try and make it as understandable as we possibly can. Concepts should be fully explained. They shouldn't just be mentioned with the assumption that the reader understands. So it's things like that. It's ensuring that all concepts are fully explained, all acronyms are fully explained, so that the understanding of the jargon that is used is provided within the manuscript itself. So somebody reading it doesn't have to go elsewhere to find out what the authors are trying to say. So they should be self-contained. So everything
Mm.
that you need to know within the manuscript is in that manuscript.
Got it. Okay. Let's see. How can libraries act as access points to inform researchers about these journals slash publishing opportunities?
Oh gosh, that's an interesting one. Um,
From the publisher perspective,
From the
obviously.
publisher, I mean, again, I'm an editor. I don't really handle the marketing side of things. I suppose, um, having access, having this, like I said, we're a subscription-based journal, so libraries can have a subscription to us, and that would enable access. I don't know whether Young wants to come in on that one.
Yes, definitely. If the nature reviews journals are available in a library, then yeah, researchers can access them a lot easier since they're subscription based. Of course, there are many other subscription models that we have uh, that we provide that are individual subscription models. But if the journals are available at the library, it kind of creates also um, community since there's a more opportunity for the the researcher base within an institution to like access the latest reviews of the that the journals provide. So yeah, it's it would be very beneficial for the community for sure.
Yeah, I
Awesome.
suppose
Okay.
if the libraries enabled access via a subscription, everybody working within that field or within that institution has that access and they can discuss the article within those teams. It can create inter-team connections, so journal clubs and things like that. So I think journal clubs are usually a new research article, but I think a review is an interesting topic for a journal club to talk through the latest developments and see what opportunities are out there to provide gaps in the research. That's another important aspect of reviews. It highlights gaps in our current knowledge where most of the reviews that we publish have a future direction section where the authors will describe what we don't know and what we need to know and what needs to be done in order to get that knowledge. And that's where researchers can come up with new topics, new hypotheses, new potential research opportunities.
Awesome. Okay. Great. Okay, it looks like we have another question here. Are there any tools to check articles for grammar, phrasing, plagiarism, before submission? And would any sort of tools like that be free?
As a manuscript editor, I discourage that. We don't like our articles to be pre-edited, and we don't accept reviews that have been written by a medical writer because our job is to edit them. And to us, the language is not as important as the contents. So there are some. I don't know any specifically, really, because I don't use them, and I never encourage any of the authors I work with to use them either. Yes, because of our specific workflow for publishing an article, we don't encourage our authors to use them because we will do that for you. That's our job. So. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Um, you mentioned Springer Nature's sensitivity reading and inclusive language guides. Are there any other guides in the works, perhaps
Not
on
that I know of.
citation?
Again, they are developed by a different team from the editors. So the editors get the training in them, but the development of them happens via a different team within the company. So I don't know what's currently in the pipeline.
Got it. Okay. Let's see. Are Nature Reviews journals? Are they only available in English? Are they available in different languages?
I believe they are only available in English. I can check whether they are available in any other languages, but I don't have that information to hand.
Okay, sure. Let's see. You also talked when you walk through the journal process or the publishing process, you talked about the artwork that
Mhm.
Spring in Nature adds. So, how involved are the authors in creating the artwork?
As involved as they want to be, really. Most frequently, the authors provide the original draft, and then the editor will annotate that draft for the art editor, because the art editor is an artist, they're not a scientist. So they go off what they are given. So what they are given needs to be clear in terms of, what needs to be highlighted, what the important aspects of that figure are. The labeling needs to be correct, because the art editor will go from what is there, because they have no specific background in that topic. They are an artist. And they also work across several journals. So, for example, our art editor, say that right, works for us. He also works for Nature Reviews Genetics. So they're quite different fields. They have very different figures. Yes, but most frequently the first draft is supplied by the author, and then the editor can have a conversation with the author if the editor thinks that the figure could be modified in some way to enhance its utility, or if something can be added, or if the editor thinks that the figure's good as is, they can annotate it and send it directly to the art editor for them to draw up, which would then culminate in an initial proof, which we then send back to the authors for checking. Sometimes when we edit an article, we'll think to ourselves as an editor, actually a figure here would be really useful for the reader, and we can suggest that to the author. We can either do a little sketch ourselves, depending on how confident we are with our doodling, or we can look for a similar figure to work off. We do encourage our figures to be original. We don't like reusing previously published figures. So we do like them to add something new, basically, and not just reiterate something that's already been published. But yeah, I hope that answers the question. Answers the question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Okay, great. Yeah, we have a couple minutes left. I think time for maybe one more question. Um, when you talked about the reviews as a teaching tool, you showed, the sections and figures, references, subject, associated content. Is that something that the editor does or the
So
author?
it's sort of a culmination of everything. So obviously the team behind the platform online, they put all of that together so the person looking at the screen can use it. But obviously the editor checks the references so that the references work. So when you hover over a reference, it ends up as the right reference. The editor checks the figure labeling so that when you look at the figure in the text, you're looking at the right figure. The authors and the editors both choose the subject categories that they think the author that the manuscript fits into, which then end up online. The author and the editor also choose the subject headings. We have a standard set, so there's obviously abstract, introduction, and conclusions. They're always included, so those three, and the references section. But then the other headings within the text are authored by the authors and edited by the editors, and that comes into sort of the flow as well. So the subsections, how the subsections are headed, how that helps with reading the article. So it's a very collaborative process, that lots of people involved.
Awesome. Okay.
Mhm.
I think we're about out of time here, so I'll say thanks so much to Louise for taking the time to speak with us today, and also to Unyoung, and thank you to our attendees for your questions and your comments. I'd like to remind our viewers that we did record today's program, so be on the lookout for a follow-up email from Choice and ACRL with a link to the recording. Also, if you have a few minutes after the presentation to fill out a brief survey, we would really appreciate it. So thanks again to all of you out there for joining us. We hope you learned something new from the webinar and hope to see you again soon on another session.